Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Ready, Aim, Retire. I'm Rob Kirvan, your host, the show where we talk about everything from growing your wealth, distributing your wealth, and eventually, what does your legacy look like? And a broad range of topics in between. Feel free, if there's something on this show that catches your eye and you want to get some more information, give us a call direct, 630-780-1099. You can also go right on our website and book an appointment, complimentary, no charge, no obligation at apadvisorsgroup.com. But before I go any further, folks, I have to say hi to my co-host, Tony, Mr. Minnesota, 1978 Shore. You guys probably weren't aware of that, but yeah, he won the title.
Yeah, Shorelander goes for the gold, I think was the headline.
That was the papers, right.
Yeah, they nicknamed me Shorelander. I don't know why.
I like Shorelander.
I don't know what that means. Actually, a mutual friend of ours called me that this morning. Bill Altman came up with that.
He called you Shorelander?
Yeah. In fact, he texted me out of the blue at 8 a.m. saying, Shorelander goes for the gold. So no context. You know how Bill is.
Right. Let me just.
But yeah. Thanks for that.
So have you been to the fair yet?
I have not been to the fair yet.
God.
I was out of town. I was in Nashville, not for Evolve, but I was down there for 4 days.
I saw like a Facebook with your friends doing the record shop hunting.
Yep.
Pretty fun.
Yeah, it was a blast. Yeah, it went well. I lived there for 6 years, so it was fun to see a lot of old friends and people I worked with in the industry. So, I got to hang out with Joe Bonamassa. You ever heard of Joe Bonamassa, the blues guitarist? Awesome.
Oh, I don't want to go down this path again, Tony. Last time we talked music,
nope.
I didn't know
we're not
Canadian band, and I got just scolded.
But
Rush.
It's fall.
It was Rush, yeah.
But it's fall.
Okay.
And I love the fall. It's my favorite time of year. How about you, Rob? What have you been up to? What do you have to talk about today?
Well, coming up this week at the long weekend coming up, Tony.
Yep.
And I'm sure most people have like an action-packed, maybe getting together with family and things like this.
Maybe grilling.
Maybe grilling out for sure if the weather's nice, which I think it's going to be.
Yeah.
Me, however, Tony, we're doing an expansion here. So we're adding a conference room and we have to move the kitchen and these kinds of things. So the tech person that has to move all the data, the phones, all that, they're here 9 a.m. Saturday. So I am here.
Oh.
I am here until everything works. So it's a Saturday. Obviously, it's not a work day. We're thinking if something goes bad, we got Sunday. Something goes really bad, we got Monday. So we're hopeful. These things never go smooth. We've done them before. They just never go smooth. There's always something, that's not working properly. And then the following week, we're doing this integration of our back office into Salesforce. And so we got two big technical things. So we got to take care of the first one first, to make sure that's all done. And then we're upgrading the system to be able, better serve people, be more efficient in here. So it's all the things you kind of have to do, but it's a bummer. I'm going to be here on Saturday, Tony. I'm just going to tell you, like, I'd like to be almost anywhere else on the long weekend. Like you name the spot, maybe the Minnesota State Fair. I don't know, but but I will be here. I asked the girls, I asked everybody here if they want to join me. I said, you know what? It's a Saturday work day is a good work day. And I had no takers. So
surprise.
I will be lone wolfing it here.
Is Nat even going to be there with you?
No, not a chance.
Not a chance. No. Okay. So the kids, Nat, they're out.
They're out. Katie's going away. Katie's actually got a bachelorette in Michigan this weekend. So she's actually leaving today. So everyone's got some good plans, it seems, other than me. But I'm hopeful my Sunday just opens up nicely, Tony. I'm hoping everything, they figure they're going to be here for 10, 12 hours doing this. So, maybe by 6, 7 o'clock on Saturday night, if everything's smooth, it opens up my Sunday, Monday. We'll see.
That's true.
I haven't booked anything just in case I got to be back here, but that's progress, Tony. And you always want to be pushing forward or else you're kind of going backwards.
Right. So, but you're smart to plan extra time for tech because like you say, anytime technology or computers are involved, there's always issues, right? I mean, it never fails.
No. And there's so much because you got not only do you have the computers, obviously we have the YouTube room, then we have the phone systems, then we have copiers, and we have scanners. Like, there's just a lot of stuff,
Wi-Fi.
that has the Wi-Fi. Everything's got to be working. So,
the interwebs have to work there in
the
order for
interwebs,
you
it
to do
takes a
business.
while. Yeah,
Yeah.
to be able to flip everything to a new location, which we have to flip it because we got to break through a wall, so it has to be done like literally sooner than later. So we'll get her done. So that's my weekend, Tony. I'm looking forward to it.
Are you using the same space you have and just reconfiguring it,
No,
or are you actually expanding out
we're
into
expanding out.
the space next to you?
Mhm.
Oh, good for you though. That's got to be exciting.
Yeah, we got a big, so we got a new room dedicated just to the, photocopies, the data equipment, all that. So we have a whole separate room now. We have 2 more offices, and then we put in this big, um, common room that's, it's gonna have kitchen, bar in it, things like that,
Nice.
seat, like couches, chairs, table, to sit at. So it'll allow, like, Natalie does a lot of these, women only events, where we go to all these different spots. It'll allow her to do that in-house and be able to get really creative and do some fun stuff. And then for
Sure.
stuff that we have here, it just allows a much bigger space to be able to, bring people through and allow us to kind of work a little easier. Our kitchen right now, Tony, you've seen it. It's pretty small.
Yeah, it's tiny. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a tiny kitchen. So we needed something anyway because you get 5, 6 people. It's you have to take shifts to have a bite of your food for lunch. So
Right.
this
Sure.
will open it up better. So it'll be good. Yeah.
Good. Is that conference room going to stay behind you with the bull
Yes.
and the
Oh,
bear?
yeah.
Okay.
The one
Good.
beside it,
Oof.
you'll see it when you come down next, but the one beside it's gonna mimic it. It's gonna be a small conference room, but it's gonna have the same glass, all that kind of stuff.
Oh,
So
cool.
yeah, it's gonna look
Cool.
pretty sweet.
Now let's talk about what happens when you leave me money. When you're
Oh,
gonna, I know I'm gonna inherit some things from you.
yeah.
Obviously, I'll outlive both you and Nat.
Oh, no,
That's a
there's
given.
no doubt about that.
I
There's
mean,
no
I'm
doubt.
not aging. I mean, look
No,
at this.
no.
Yeah.
You keep on that steady diet of those coffees and energy drinks, for sure you'll live
Oh,
for
I don't do too many energy drinks. And coffee is just
hello, there it is. If you're watching at home,
oh,
folks, I saw it.
that was delicious.
A nice iced coffee. Yeah, so yeah, let's talk about that, Tony. So what happens when you inherit money? So, um, one, you're happy, right, Tony?
Yeah.
You're probably happy and sad, obviously, right?
Well,
So
yeah,
if you're
obviously, you're happy that the person thought of you and cared about you, whether it was a family member or, um, the host of the show, you co-host, whatever.
yeah, however that shakes
Uh,
out, right. You're sad that obviously, they've gone on to another place,
Sure.
but, you're inheriting money, and the thing with inheriting money is there's a lot of nuances to it, and a lot of people don't know. You think like, "I inherit 100,000, great, here's your 100,000." It doesn't
Nope.
work like that. So
There's so many rules, aren't there, and
so
caveats and the T word taxes, right?
oh,
That's the big
taxes
one.
play. And so I'll cover a few ways you can inherit money today to hopefully help you folks out there just understand how things are passed down from some, from it could be a parent, it could be a relative, it could be like Tony said, the host of a show to whoever is getting it. And it's very important, So let's go with the basic one first, Tony. How about a house? So a lot of times people will inherit a house, like your parents are living in it. You'll have the opportunity to inherit a house. And there's a couple caveats there. So I see people over time, Tony, where they'll come in, they'll be referred into my office, say, "Hey, we want to, taking a look at everything." And I'll ask about the house. They're like, "Oh, you know what? I put it in my kid's name, so it just passes directly to them." Well, what happens when you inherit a house like that is if I put my house, let's say my house is worth 200,000 bucks. I bought it 30 years ago. So now it's worth 600,000. So it's gone up in value. It's gone up 400,000. If I put my kid's name on the title of my house, or even as a joint owner or as all by themselves, and from a parent standpoint, I understand what you're doing. You're trying to make it easy on them,
Right.
and
Right.
that's noble, and you're getting your stuff in order, and that's what you're trying to do. But what you've actually done is you've passed on your cost basis, which is the 200,000, to whoever inherits it. So now they have a $400,000 gain in this house that guess what they pay on that, Tony? Taxes.
Yes.
And they're going to pay on $400,000 gain, 60 to 80,000 bucks, somewhere in that
Oof.
zone. And a lot of people do that. A lot of people. And the better way to do that is if I have a home and I'm going to pass it on, let's say I got 3 daughters, so it's going to my 3 daughters. That home stays in my name, or even better, it stays in the name of my trust. And what happens when I pass is it steps up in value. So whereas I bought it for 200, the value now is 400. In the first scenario, you got to pay taxes on 400. If it's just inherited naturally, you don't pay tax on anything. It steps up to the current day's value. So if the current day's value is 600,000, that's the cost basis. So I pay tax on none of it. Now, caveat to that is, let's say, and this happens, and I'll give you a personal story in a sec, but let's say you don't sell the house right away. Let's say you got to clean it out, you got to do this, and maybe it's a year, 2 years down the road, but before you sell it, then you only pay taxes on the current value. Let's say that's 600, and let's say 2 years later it was worth 630,000. You only paid on the 30,000.
Ah.
And I have a real life story, Tony.
And that's step up in basis? Is that what that is?
Yeah, step up in cost basis. So that's something, folks, to be really, really, really aware of, because that is a tax trap that you think you're doing something good, but without having the expertise behind you, you're actually hurting whoever's inheriting that money. And it's in your estate, right? You want your money to pass in the most efficiently way possible, right? So I'll give you a story, Tony. My mother passed away in 2020. So I was up in Canada this weekend for a wedding. My niece got married. It was in a barn. It was super cool. Everything was just, kind of fun. They had a lot of shots at the bar though, Tony, which I found odd at the wedding, but I got all my nieces and nephews there. And my brother-in-laws and stuff. So, things got out of hand. Let's just say
Oh, sure.
they got out of hand.
As they will at a wedding reception.
Yeah, I had my daughters there, everyone's kind of in, but it was super fun. But my point of that is, so I was up in Canada. That's where my mom's from. She was from Canada. Her house, that I have a brother and sister were inheriting, it closed the Monday we left. 5 years later. 5 years, and I won't get into the stories or whatever, but that 5 years, what happens is they value it 5 years ago, they value it now, and we pay tax on whatever that gain is, and
okay.
Now we have to figure that part out. So, so my advice to people on that is, if you think you're inheriting a house, make sure it stays in your name, and then whoever gets that, if you're planning on selling it anyway, don't kick the can down the road, just sell it, just sell it, because it's an asset sitting there. So that's number one. The same rule applies, Tony. Let's say you had an after-tax brokerage account. A lot of our clients have after-tax accounts. They might have a trust account, where, they're just growing it and it's going to be passed on. The same rule applies there. Whereas, if I pass away, whatever the value of that account is, let's say my value of that account was $100,000. When I pass away, that's my cost basis. That all of that doesn't matter what I put into it. If it could have, I could have put $10,000 into it, had a $90,000 gain, but my heirs get it at 100,000. Should I drag my feet? And moving an investment account it doesn't take long, but it's a few months, by the time everything kind of settles its way through. So maybe that 100 went to, 105. You'd pay tax on the $5,000. And again, don't put that in your kid's name. Don't think you're making life easier. You're making it harder, because depending on what you started that account with, they will pay the tax on the whole thing. If I started that account with 10 grand and it's worth 100, that's a $90,000 gain that your kid's going to pay, or whoever's inheriting this money is going to pay. So the two big things, just be aware of what's called a step up in cost basis, and don't be putting your kids' names on all these titles, because just because you think you're saving them heartache, you're costing a ton of money. You're better to organize it, put it in a
So you're
trust.
saying leave it in your name until after it passes, then they inherit it and only pay the gains from the time you originally
passed.
Oh, the
Right.
gains from when you pass is how
Right.
it works.
So you paid no tax on everything up until the day I passed. There's no tax due on a house, an after-tax brokerage account, or an after-tax trust account, investment account. It could be, you could invest it in anything, but like anything that's after tax, you don't pay tax on it. So be very aware of that, folks, because I see that in my office.
What about a house or land? So if somebody owns some land and a house and they pass away, like my grandfather did,
Mhm.
and when they pass away, they left it to my dad.
Yep.
So then he would only pay the gains.
From that point on. So let's say your dad inherited it, right?
Yeah.
And at that time when your dad inherited it, and that's probably years ago,
Yeah.
you would have to go back into it and see, if he still owns it, then that's fine. So he would only, if he inherits it, he pays no tax. And then the gain starts from the time he inherited. Let's say I inherited something 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and it was worth 300,000. Well, now it's probably worth 1,000,000, say.
Yeah.
There's no tax, and then you're next in line, let's say, and you inherit it. There's still no tax due. As long as it's in your dad's name and then it goes to you, there's still no tax. So all of that tax and tax and tax, it can obviously add up, and that's, you want to keep, in your case, you want to keep the farm in the family, right? So
Yeah.
you want that passed down, and then let if you're not going to farm it, then maybe that's the time things get sold. But but you want to keep it in together, not taxable, where people are making decisions to pay taxes where you haven't sold the land or anything like that.
Right.
Right. So it
But
makes
but if I inherit it and sell it,
yeah,
then do I have to pay taxes on it?
you pay tax on the gain from the time your father passed, let's say.
Yeah.
So let's say it took you a year to sell the place, right?
Sure.
The farm. So
the valuation of when I inherited it to when I sell it, I'll pay tax on that amount.
just that amount,
The
nothing else.
difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if someone passes, you generally
Yeah.
bring an appraiser out, get a number.
Yeah.
It's the easiest thing to do, and then decide kind of, what does that road look like? Are
Right.
we selling it now, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, never? Who knows? But if you get someone in there that puts a valuation on it, then you know what your starting point is.
Yeah.
You
I
know?
think that yeah, a lot of people get confused about the step up in basis, and it can be
Mhm.
so powerful, and they need to
Yeah.
understand it so
Yes.
they don't end up paying taxes. They don't, I mean, some people actually, I've seen it where, especially with farms where I grew up, people that didn't understand it worked with an inexperienced CPA,
Mhm.
and they ended up paying taxes they didn't need to, or didn't do it right. Like they put it in their kid's name before
Yep.
they passed.
Yep.
And like you mentioned, there are mistakes that can be costly mistakes. And I'm glad you're talking about this.
Mhm.
But I also want to remind our listeners, the good news is that you look at tax planning from an overall financial plan and retirement planning standpoint, but you're not a CPA. But
No.
you work with CPAs.
Right.
We just need to point out you're not a CPA. For
No.
individual tax advice and for like to prepare your taxes and do this year's
I
taxes,
do not do that.
you don't do that, and you need to have a tax professional that
Right.
you work
And we
with.
have a partner firm that we work with
Yeah,
that do a lot.
exactly.
They do a lot of our clients' taxes, and then when we
Yep.
get into tax situations, that's who we lean on. They're CPAs. That's what they do all day.
Yeah.
So we definitely lean on them. Obviously, I have a broad range and very knowledgeable in taxes, but yeah, you're
Sure.
right. I'm not doing tax returns or anything like that. I'm
Yeah, we
fine.
just have to say you're not a CPA. If
Yeah.
you mention taxes as
Yes,
a
I
financial
am not.
advisor, you're not a CPA, but you work alongside CPAs,
Mhm.
and you need somebody who's looking at the big picture, and that's what a trusted financial advisor like yourself does, a financial
Right.
services professional who's a fiduciary, who's going to look out for your best interests. And I'm not going to name names, Rob Kirvan, but I know a guy
Right.
that can help
Right.
you, help our
Sure.
listeners, and they can give you a call. And,
Yeah.
and I think this is very helpful because
Mm.
I saw it happen with my dad and my grandpa's farm. And,
Yep.
also if a business, let's say you own a small business or have a family business or even a medium or big size business, you need to know this ahead of time, how to plan
For
for all
sure.
this. And that's why you work alongside estate planning attorneys,
Mhm.
tax professionals, and you look at that big picture because you don't want to have your kids lose the family business or farm just to have to pay taxes.
From poor planning, right? So from
Yeah,
poor planning.
from
Here's
poor
another
planning.
one, Tony. So another way you inherit money, and probably just as common as inheriting a home, something like that. An IRA. So let's say I inherited an IRA. So again, what does that look like? If it's my spouse, if Natalie passed, God forbid, and I inherited her IRA, no taxes, no nothing. It's a spousal IRA, it becomes my IRA. So not a taxable event, just goes from one to the other. But my children, if they inherit my IRA, they're going to have a few choices, and definitely taxes matter in this. So when you inherit an IRA, they changed the rule through the Secure Act. You used to be able to take a little distribution every year based on your age and really stretch that for your entire life, and it was very good. We did a lot of planning like that. They changed the rule. So now what the rule is you have two choices. You can take it as a lump sum, but again, what if you inherited, a $500,000 IRA? And you take it as a lump sum, and that's taxed as ordinary income. So not only is that being taxed,
it's not capital gains, it's ordinary income, the full 20 to 30%. You'd be in the 30% bracket.
Well, yeah, you'd be over 30 because it adds on to your income. So let's say I was making $100,000 a year, and then I got this 500 and I cashed it out. So now I made $600,000. Yeah, you're going to be 39, you're close to that 39% number.
That's real money even to you, Rob. I mean, that's amazing.
It's real money to everybody. But
yeah.
But and a lot, people do that. Like the worst part of my job is I have clients that pass that I've had relationships for 10, 15 years that are friends, and then I have the children here, kind of walking through these, and it every time they take they cash the whole thing, and it breaks my heart because the parents had saved for so long. The other way you can take it, which I think is I can't use the word better because everyone's in a different financial situation, but just to me personally, it makes a lot more sense, is you can take that same IRA and you have to liquidate it now by IRS rules over a 10-year period. So by year 10, Tony, there has to be nothing left in that account, so a lot of times what we do is we do 10% a year, but then what happens?
Spread it out.
We try to spread
that tax burden out,
exactly,
so you're not being bumped up into that higher tax bracket.
Yeah, and then we reinvested it in an after-tax account, so it keeps growing. So by the time the 10 years is up, you have well over the 500 because it's been growing. But you paid the taxes along the way, so you're only going to own taxes now on gains that you have in that account. So that's a better way to do it because you do limit it, the tax liability. So instead of getting taxed on 500,000, you're getting taxed on 50. You're not using the money because it's, you inherited it. Some people use it obviously, but in a perfect world, you don't use it. You just keep reinvesting it. So someday when you're retired, that's going to be sitting there. And that's another way to keep the farm in the family, keep the money in the family so you can use it for retirement. And to me, it's just it's a better way. It's a better way to do it, to spread that tax liability out over time, and a lot of people don't know you can do that.
Well, you're talking about inherited IRAs, and that's there's a whole set of rules, like you say, that go with that. It's different for the spouse and then non-spouse. Inheriting an IRA as a spouse is different than inheriting an IRA as a child, like if your parents or grandparents leave you an IRA. And there are so many different IRS rules and different strategies that a financial professional can use for you to help you with that money. I have a question for you that I've always been confused about. So let's say I inherit an IRA.
Mm-hmm.
I've got to take all that money out within over a 10-year period.
Yep.
So let's say I do the 10% a month or a year thing or whatever it is. Yeah. I take a certain amount out each year and until it's gone, the 10% a year. So can I take that 10%? I have to pay taxes when I take it out, but then can it go into a Roth, or their contribution? It's not earned income, so I can't put it in directly in a Roth.
It comes under earned income, but you have to take the distribution first. And it's really a required distribution.
Sure. So you can't roll over.
You can't roll that directly. And then you have, so you can't do like a Roth conversion, if that's what you're kind of getting at. Like, now you could take some of the proceeds and do, you can, a regular Roth, you can do an annual contribution, but you can't use that as a conversion.
Right. But I can contribute it to I can contribute at least some of it into a Roth, right?
Yeah. You can do you can really, once you've paid the tax on it, you can do whatever you want with it.
Sure.
So you want to contribute to a Roth, you want to pay down your house, you want to just grow it at in a taxable account, anything like that. They just care that you're paying the tax on it. And the IRS's point of view, which makes sense, is we used to stretch IRAs for, from parents to children to the grandchildren.
Yeah, you could stretch an IRA as long as you want it. But now the government said, no, we want our money.
We want our taxes, right?
Yeah.
We want the tax, which makes sense, obviously, because you get somebody that's 20 years old, they're taking a very tiny bit amount out of that account, and it's just growing, and snowball effect, right? But here's a side note when you're talking about Roths. So let's say, that was a traditional IRA that becomes an inherited IRA. But when you inherit a Roth IRA, Tony, different ball game. So we know from our shows, and I'm sure everyone that is loyal listeners out there. And if you're not, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because you get information before we send an email out, or before you're scrolling on it. You'll get a notification saying, hey, guess what? Rob and Tony have a new show out. You'll be able to see it. It doesn't cost you anything. It's just information. I'm always like, information is power. Knowledge is power to me. The more you know, the less mistakes you'll make. So definitely do that. But we have talked about this in the past. But if I inherit a Roth IRA, I inherited, there's zero tax on it, Tony. I still have to take it out over 10 years, but I don't have to take it annually. I can wait till the 10th year and liquidate that account and take it out, right? So what does that allow to do? It just grows tax-free, tax-free, tax-free. If I had 100,000, 10 years later, it's worth 200,000. I get the 200,000 tax-free, and then I can invest it into what I want. I can't take it and just put it into a Roth, kind of like your other question, but I can let that money sit. And folks out there, we've talked on this show about Roth conversions. We've talked in this show about contributing to Roth. We've talked on this show about, if you have a 401k, choose the Roth part of it. Here, Tony, at our firm, we don't offer non-Roth 401k. We don't even want people to make a mistake, even though I kind of helicopter, parent, everyone here to make sure they're where they should be. I feel it's literally my responsibility to make sure that they're in the right spot. But we only do Roth 401k. So
yeah, it makes sense.
They're the best account to have, right? So, and when you're passing this down to, whether that's children, whether that's nieces and nephews, whoever is getting, they're getting it this tax
radio show co-host.
I'll put Tony's information up if everyone wants to add him.
Right.
But you get it tax free. It's the best account to have. It really, really is. And as you can see, much more tax favorable than inheriting an IRA. Where you do get into paying the taxes, and it affects your regular income, because you have to take these lump sums of money. So I guess in summation, I would say, if you're coming into money, inheriting money, I would say give us a call, Tony. I would say give us a call at 630-780-1099, or go right to our website. You can make an appointment there at apadvisorsgroup.com. It's important to sit down with somebody that knows these rules.
Yeah.
That knows how this works. If you're a person out there that are concerned of, how's my money going to pass, which is, that should be a concern. How's it going to get to where it's going? Let's sit down and look at it. Let's sit down and talk about it and see kind of what that looks like for you. So now you have knowledge is power. You understand this is going this way. This is going this way. Some things you can't change, Tony, but at least you know how it's going to go. An IRA you can't change. You can do Roth conversions, and you can try to make it more tax efficient, but it is what it is. But you really have to understand how that's going to pass, and I think that's really important.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
Well, Rob, great show today. I encourage our listeners to pick up the phone, give you a call. You've helped so many people. You love to hear from our listeners and viewers. That number again is 630-780-1099. Again, 630-780-1099, or go to apadvisorsgroup.com. Rob, great show today.
Great seeing you, Tony.
Yeah, good to see you. And that does it for today's episode of Ready, Aim, Retire with our host, Rob Kirvan.